Take 16. So the thing is, heavily caveating this video, I do know what I'm doing when it comes to making adventure films, in theory. I've made a number of successful films. I've got a film out on Netflix at the moment, The Yukon Assignment. You may have seen it. I've had films out in cinemas, seen by audiences all over the world, and I run a workshop on making your own adventure films. So the theory's there, like I know I can do it properly. But I guess with time poverty and trying to blend the kind of two spheres of my life, or professional life, if you will, of going out on adventures, and also the passion for photography and filmmaking, I quite often get myself into a situation where I'm out on an adventure with friends. I've got either my main camera with me, or perhaps my iPhone or a GoPro or something like that. And I just think to myself, this is a great situation that a lot of people aren't, don't have the opportunity to get into. I'm going to take some film of that, partly because I love doing it, but partly because it feels like there's a story to tell, and I want to share that with the world, with other people. If nothing else, just a record for ourselves of what a great day it was. The problem comes that I'll record loads of footage and think, that's brilliant, I love the shot of that, I love the shot of that, and I just end up with tons and tons of footage on my phone, on memory cards, on hard drives, that never actually sees the light of day. It never gets edited together. And it's the same reoccurring problems that I have every time. So partly for a sort of catharsis for me, but also hopefully to help you guys out, I've put this together as the sort of top 5 mistakes that I make over and over again when it comes to adventure filmmaking, and hopefully give you some ideas of how best to avoid it. So what I generally end up with, as I say, is huge amount of data, huge amount of footage, of endless amounts of B-roll, of like connecting shots, but no A-roll to go with it, nothing that actually carries the story, carries the narrative. It quite often will have totally random dialogue that perhaps was funny for us as a team when we're out, but is complete inside jokes and makes no sense to anyone else. Got to get your value out of the rope. Or the audio is really rubbish and just completely unusable, and that doesn't hold together. And quite often I'll have loads and loads of clips that individually look okay, but there's nothing that will kind of connect those clips together and turn it into a story, where I've got a lot of the same sort of looking shots that perhaps felt different at the time, but if you're not really used to canoeing down a river, for example, the same view of looking down the canoe at the rapid will look the same every time it's shown on screen. So there's nothing that I can actually put together into a film. So what would I suggest that you do? Well, the first thing is to start thinking about what kind of film you want to produce before you go and do it. And this is where I quite often go wrong, that I'm just getting my camera out when I'm actually already on an adventure, thinking, oh, I'll just get a few bits of footage here. But really I need to premeditate what it is that I'm going to turn into a story about this particular adventure. Great stories, great films are quite often formed of 3 parts, the 3-act structure. So somewhere, even if it's a mini story, you want to get in the first act, which is where the characters are introduced, the environment that you're in is introduced, and you give some sense of what might be the main kind of part of the story that's coming up, some kind of obstacle that they may have to face, some kind of challenge, something that's going to be difficult, which takes you into Act 2, which is where you want some kind of conflict. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's a fight or breaking down in the team, although that could be quite interesting. But it could be some kind of challenge that really takes our characters to a sort of deeper place. You learn more about them. Potentially it could be the environment as well. But it's some kind of conflicting part within the story where you're not quite sure what the outcome will be, and that will engage your viewer and kind of give them a sense of I could be kind of in that, facing those issues with the characters alongside them. And then that will take you to Act 3, where that whatever it was might resolve itself. So in a climbing scenario, it might be climbers, the big part of the challenge is when they've got to the crux of the wall. It's really, really hard part of the climb. Are they going to be able to do it or not? Team gets behind them, loads of support, they place the right bits of gear and they move past that crux. Then in the resolution of it, they're finishing the climbing route. There's potentially celebration, camaraderie, a feel-good factor about the fact that they've completed that route. Or perhaps they don't complete it. Perhaps they decide to actually back off the route and come back another day, and it's a more reflective piece about how it's not worth risking your life for something, and you'll kind of pursue it another day, whatever. But however you have that story, and with adventure filmmaking, it quite often you can't over plan that. Like, you have to have an idea of the direction it's going in, but things will just unfold when you're actually in the field. So you need to be quite adaptable as to what way it will go. That will give you the three cohesive parts to the story. Act 1, introduce everyone. Act 2, some kind of conflict. And then Act 3, resolve the situation and round the film off. Tip 2 would be shoot to edit. So my top tip on this would be getting all your footage in such a way that it will go together really easily on your editor. So what we're really talking about here is 5 key kind of shots. You want a nice wide establishing shot that will give us a really good sense of what kind of environment you're in, what's going on around us, so we've got an idea of where we are. You want some kind of medium shot in on potentially the characters or some element of the environment or a canoe or whatever else, so that we've got a good sense of the elements within the film with a bit of environmental stuff in the background so that we can place where it is. You'd want some close-up shots, particularly of facial expressions and things like that when something's interesting is happening. That really draws us in and engages with the characters. That's really, really nice. You want close-up detail, and this is a really important one actually for editing, that if somebody's tying a knot, for example, you'd have a close-up on the hands so that you can see the rope and everything going. That makes it much easier to cut between different shots and travel in time. So by going in close, we can then cut to a wider shot, and we don't mind so much visually that we've completely jumped in time or jumped in space, because we've got that kind of transition shot in the middle. And then the final type of shot is your kind of alternative angle, and this is really good fun in adventure films because we've got things like action cameras. We can get into strange places. 360 cameras are really good for this as well. Drone shots of getting some complete alternative view that you wouldn't normally get just by standing there. So you might be going super low, you might be going super high, or putting your camera in a place that it just normally wouldn't be, like behind a waterfall or strapped to the end of a canoe paddle so that it goes through the water. Makes for really interesting shots. They're the type of shots that I tend to come back with thousands of them, and as I say, nothing else to put them together, but they are very important shots. So with those 5 key shots, your establishing wide shots, your medium shots, your close shots, and close-ups of hands. If you've got characters, the medium shots can also include over the shoulder, and then your kind of alternative view shots. You've got a lot that you can put together in your editing suite. An age-old adage in filmmaking is show, don't tell. So in an ideal scenario, what's happening within the narrative you should just be able to visually see throughout the film. There are times that you can cheat this slightly, or perhaps it's quite nuanced, it's something that the audience might not understand, that you need a bit of voiceover or potentially a character explaining what's happening. But as much as possible, it will be most engaging if you can show what's happening. And that's sometimes travelling from one place to another, and might involve a graphic of a map, for example, to explain why we've gone from this place to that place, where it might be something that a casual viewer might not understand, of how do we get to from the top of the ridge down to the bottom by abseiling. What on earth is abseiling like? Maybe there needs to be some extra context. But generally speaking, if you can show it rather than tell it, then that will work much better for your narrative. Don't forget your audio. All our devices these days, be it mobile phones, action cameras, main cameras, all have very, very good video quality. And there's you can get away with an awful lot just using those devices. What's generally missing from so much, particularly on YouTube, is good quality audio. And a classic of this is your sort of GoPro action camera that's notorious for having terrible sound, and you'll have the action there, but the sound is completely garbled, or there's loads of wind noise or river noise, and it's almost unbearable to watch. Generally speaking, people would sit down and watch something that's terrible video quality so long as it's got good sound, but people will rarely watch good video with bad sound. So you don't want to neglect that. Things like smartphones tend to have quite good sound recording now, as long as it's not windy. As soon as it is windy, then you need to start considering either having remote mics that will clip into your cameras, or even having a separate sound recorder, so that you can lay in like sync the audio afterwards, or potentially even introducing artificial sound that will sound less clipped and peaked. But the sound and the sound design behind things is really important. If you want to take it to the next level, it's worth looking at some of the behind the scenes videos about how they make amazing productions like Blue Planet, and all the sound effects in there are done by Folio, and you just wouldn't know when you're watching it. Like when you see a jellyfish leap out and grab a little crustacean that's going past, in your head that's the sound they're recording there, but it's all kind of made up in a studio and put together. So that's a really good example of where that sound design and the overall audio will engage your audience and bring them in. So don't neglect that. My final tip brings all that together, really, that I'm sure many of you will have heard the expression story is king or queen, but story is the most important thing. So if your footage doesn't serve the story, it doesn't matter how fantastic that shot was. If it doesn't serve the story, cut it. It's not important. So everything must bring the narrative along. Equally, when you're out and thinking about this shoot to edit thing, you need to make sure that you're on it with getting the connecting shots of what's going to move the narrative forward. How did our characters get from this place to that place? If something dramatic happens and you weren't able to record it at the time, what can you record in terms of like talking to that person that just had a capsize on a rapid, for example, and your camera wasn't out? Can you talk to them straight afterwards and get their reaction to what happened and the drama of it, so that it pushes your story forward? So remember, out of all of this, and this more than anything else is why I keep failing to make these little adventure films, is that the story is neglected. I've got lots of footage that looks really good, but I haven't got a story that will hold it together that I'm able to share. So always lead with that. I hope these 5 tips on why I always fail to make adventure films has helped you. I hope those top tips will help you not fail at yours and make some fantastic stuff. Don't overthink it. I mean, I do, and that's part of the reason why I failed to share a lot of these things, because I don't feel they're good enough to share with the world. But that's not what it's about, really. It's about creativity, going out, having these adventures, having a fantastic time with your friends, staying safe, obviously, and then finding a way to share these magical experiences with other people. So don't let that kind of pressure put you off. But using those tips, I'm sure you're going to come up with some amazing stuff. Please do share. I'd love to see what you come up with. And until then, take care of yourselves and look forward to seeing you next time.